We did it, guys. Second place in BSF Philippines. The deck I used is Shiranui. I've learned a lot in this tournament and I'll be sharing the lessons I've learned with you guys. And this tournament also gave me a clear understanding of what my weaknesses are as a player. So let's go. So although I didn't put much effort or thought into deck building, this deck performed well in teams, but in singles there's definitely some changes I recommend. So for the right deck, obviously you'd want the grade 2 Shoujodoji. Grade 2 Shoujodoji is just too good, especially on the grade 2 game. So look at top 5, choose 2 stealth units, put 1 to soak, and call the rest. You need 2 stealth units to call, so that's why you have to be wary on running too much non-stealth units. And I just put the crest in my right deck so I don't forget. I'm running only 2 Oboro in the main deck because I was afraid of running too much no shields, and I run 3 of the searchers anyways. The only downside of the searcher is it's more strict on the timing if you want to stride to Mukuro. Since this one, if you either draw it or you drive check it, it's fine, you can just discard it for the next turn you want to Mukuro. But if you only drive check this on the turn before, or you draw it on the same turn you wanted to stride to Mukuro, you won't be able to search. But this is also better in the grade 2 game since you just have more units to call. But I guess you can also call this with Shoujodoji, but this one you can call it from hand, so that's why I used only 2 Oboro. But you can also add 1 more, it's just preference. And this one you can also filter your deck, like for 1 you can remove 1 or even 2 for Oboros from your deck. Then only 1 Esperidia. I think if this was singles I'd definitely add more, but since it was teams it was fine because you're less likely to fight other decks that counter you. The reason you want to run Esperidia is that your restanders from the deck set requires you to dominate at least once to restand. So a lot of times if your opponent bracing ladder or have no rear guards on your first ride, you won't be able to do much, and Esperidia helps you with that, so you have at least a multi-attack. But I also didn't run more because in my current build I already have 4 Bliorvis, which are non-stealth units, and I've already whiffed like 2 times in the tournament for grade 2 Shoujodoji and 1 in the finals. And if it wasn't Bliorvis, I would have called 1. The upside or the benefit of having Esperidia and Bliorvis is you can use Bliorvis skill on your grade 3 turn if you have Esperidia in hand, or you can also use it as shield if you have Esperidia. But yeah, I should have run more Esperidia. I only have 1 and I didn't bother finding more because it was a week before the tournament. That's why others run the other Shiranui, the Stride Fodder Shiranui, because it's a stealth. You can call it with the grade 2 Shoujodoji. You're less likely to whiff the Shoujodoji and the Izisao. But with Bliorvis it's just easier to discard, and you don't lose much hand cards if you keep on drawing into him, since you can discard it for grade 3, draw 1, then discard for strike. Then bracing ladder, you have to use this. Almost every team is bringing Shiranui and you need this for the mirror. And guys, the +5 is only for your turn, so you don't get the +5 in your opponent's turn. It's only during your turn. Then 3 Izisao, you can only use this when you're on grade 2 Shoujodoji because it needs the skill. But CB1 check top 5, add 1 stealth card to hand. So this is great. This will win you the grade 2 game and also a great searcher for your PG. So there are a lot of matchups where you'd want to get PG. it's a great way to search it out. Since your PGs are stealth, you can add it to hand. Then Furai is your best restander. The +5 for each dominate is really good, and you definitely want him on your Mukura turn. I'll just explain later and when we're discussing the strides. Usually the power boost from Furai on his first attack is more helpful than the draw from Seke, because the 10 or 15k from Furai pressures your opponent and sometimes forces them to get rid of the pieces they need for their next turn. So a lot of times this helps more, and usually you have a lot of hand cards anyways. I only go Seke over Furai if I'm really desperate to survive next turn, or I know that if I survive next turn I'll win. Then Elementaria with the PGs. Elementaria, I think a lot of you guys already know this, but I'll just say it just in case for some. You can also use this on your rearguard attacks. So the free cost doesn't just apply on vanguard attacks, because it only requires your opponent to have triple drive ability. Tenrei is also great for the grade 2 game because on play CB1 draw 1, and you can bounce it if the unit you dominated attack hits. But a lot of times your opponent won't allow you to bounce it back to hand if you have open CB, because this is just too good. Sometimes you're losing, and if you have 2 Tenrei, you can come back. For Shenri, the PR, a great card. If your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, or you played an order this turn, this gets +5, and at the end of the battle you can put it into Soul and draw 1. Usually you want to put it into Soul immediately, but if you know your opponent will leave no rear guards, you can keep it as a 13k booster, and before the turn you expect him to call more, that's the time you put it into Soul. But it also depends on your hand. Sometimes you just need a shield. Then the Searcher. For triggers, Dragveda. If you check this offensively, it's almost sure win because your restanders are not once per turn, except for Esperidia. Fronts, I don't think you need Ross, and the front is really strong. Adds more pressure and also helps in the grade 2 game. If you check a front in your grade 2 game, sometimes it's bigger. It helps a lot more than a crit. For the effect crit, you rarely need it, but there are some situations that it helps a lot, so that's why it's just there. And the normal crits are just too good in standard, and then heal. So for the strides, Maguntenbu, CB1 flip 1. You dominate one of your opponent's rear guards, and at the end of that battle, you retire it. Then Mukuro, Soul Blast 1. GB2, Soul Blast 1. You dominate your opponent's rear guard, and then it attacks, and then it has to attack your opponent's vanguard. And then at the end of that battle, stand and dominate all of your opponent's vanguards, and they attack your opponent's rear guard. One ruling that's where people are commonly uncertain of is if you can use Mukuro to dominate your opponent's vanguard, even if the opponent has used Bracing Ladder. But you can't, because his skill is because to dominate the opponent's vanguard, it says at the end of the battle of your opponent's dominated rearguard attack. So you have to dominate a rearguard before you can use the dominate vanguard skill. So you cannot, if your opponent use Bracing Ladder, you cannot use Mukuro to dominate your opponent's vanguard. So it's always better to just Makuntenbu and flip 1 and do nothing. I think, and if you ask me, I think it's always worth it to just CB1 and flip 1 just for the power boost. How I decide if whether or not I Maguntenbu or Mukuro? In most cases, if I have at least one Furai. If I have at least one Furai, I would go Mukuro instead of Maguntenbu. Because Furai gets +5 for each dominate attack, and Mukuro dominates 3 times when on stride 2 from his skill. So the +5 you were supposed to gain from Maguntenbu, your rear guard still have it. So it's like 5k shield difference on Maguntenbu turn, and Mukuro not accounting for triggers since your Vanguard doesn't get the +5. But a lot of times, it won't matter. And if you have Furai or Esperidia, they won't get the power boost. But if you don't have a Furai, you'd need 25k shield. You only require your opponent to guard with 25k shield less. If you want the specific number, only having 2 Seke with Mukuro, your opponent only needs to guard with 110,000 shield, not accounting for triggers. And on Maguntenbu, but if you go Maguntenbu, since you're gonna flip one, you will need your opponent to have 135k shield. To make up for the power, you need to drive check 2 triggers. But if you do drive check 2 triggers from the dominated Vanguard swing, you'll require more shield, since checking a trigger in the main phase is just so strong. Because if you check crit, all effects here, it can attack 2 times with the crit and the power. So a lot of times, it's worth it to Mukuro. But I only think about it when I don't have Furai. And also, if you drive check OT, you can stand your opponent's Vanguard. If you drive check it in the main phase, in the dominated Vanguard swing, you can stand your opponent's Vanguard and do swing again and get drive checks again. And if you have one Furai and Seke, Maguntenbu, Mukuro, your opponent needs to guard with 130k shield. And then if you have Maguntenbu, 145k shield. So one trigger from the dominated Vanguard swing is enough to require more shield. But Mukuro is also great if you just need hand guards, or sometimes you don't have units in hand and you can just use his skill to hopefully drive check the units you need. So I think you'd be fine just spamming. You'd be fine getting away with just spamming Mukuro because it's just a good stride. So the only thing you lose out on is the power boost from the flip. But rarely do my games go that long where it matters. So I guess it also depends on how long the game will go. But usually my games don't last that long, where the power boost of flipping with Maguntenbu mattered, or in the tournament at least. So for my matchups, our Prism player tanked most of the Shiranuis in Swiss. I was faced with mostly the rogue deck, so we had the best case scenario. Our Prism player is getting matched up against Shiranui players, and I'm getting matched up with the rogue decks. We did the last minute switch. I was supposed to be player 1, and we didn't think much about the player position, but at the end we thought that it would be better that I would be in the middle, so we just switched last minute and it worked out. I did say in my last video that Drudge and Leonor was in my honorable mentions. I only said it briefly and I just didn't bother looking at their deck logs. But now I think I would put Draduald at 3rd and Leonorn at 4th. Interchangeably, 3rd or 4th. And Luard down to 5 because Luard without Sir Gaon, it felt really lacking when I fought against it or when I just saw it in the tournament. So round 1 against Luard win. I dominated his grade 1, the 6k serie, I think. The one that you can bind if it's the 5th battle or more to perfect guard a attack. So I was worried because if I dominated 2 times and then I swing with my restanders, he could use it on my vanguard. So I called the grade 3 from his drop and dominated it to attack the grade 1, and he guarded it 2 times. So he guarded with 20k shield 2 times. So I think that wasn't worth it for him, and because of that I didn't restand one of my restanders, but I think it wasn't worth it shield wise. And on my next turn, I was able to end it. Round 2, Jiva, his units had resist and it was tough at first because I called the board just so I can pressure him at least a bit. And then he used Strava Arena, so Strava Arena you need 5 units under him to wipe your board, and he did that. And his board was Strava Arena and Vils, I think it's Vils. So I couldn't dominate anything for 1 turn. Him using Strava Arena, I think he didn't have enough hand cards anymore, so I was able to end the game after his, I think on my second stride. But our team lost that round, and because of that actually I started to fight against rogue decks. So round 3 I won against Petralka. At this point, if you're fighting against rogue decks, if I'm fighting rogue decks with Shiranui, I just focus on not getting double crit or OT because Shiranui is just too strong and you just have to focus on securing the win. So it's just simple things like making sure you don't 2-2 pass the vanguard so you don't get double crit, or making sure you have your damage is low enough so OT doesn't kill you, something like that. Round 4, Hexa Orb. The Hexa Orb player didn't get Aquamarine. Round 5, Chronojet. I couldn't handle the grade 2 game, so I just rode up. But Blurvis helps a lot with the ride up since you can draw from the discard from the ride, and then you can draw again from discard for the stride. Just Chronojet, you just PG the Fate Rider's Wing so you don't take a crit. So you can, and make sure you still have enough cards to guard the rear guard swing if the opponent gets crit, so you can be at low damage for the next stage turn. But I got Elementaria, so it made it more, the Elementaria helped a lot. So my opponent double healed, but because of the Elementaria I was able to survive another turn. Round 6, Prison. I was worried about Prison because I didn't practice against it, but I checked OT offensively. So if I check OT offensively and you have 2 restanders, it's almost guaranteed win. And then it is, yeah, in like 90% of the times it's guaranteed win. Then round 7, Luard win. Then Top Cut, I lost to the Jewel because I didn't know, or I just forgot that Zarzan can put a rear guard back to soul. So the Jewel players, what they will do is they'll call a Zarzan and use his skill to call on top of him, so at the end of the turn the rear guard goes back to soul, so you don't have any rear guards to dominate. And I forgot, or I didn't think about it, so I discarded my Esperidia and I lost that game, but the boys won. So top 4, I won against Drudge. My opponent just didn't get the grade 4, so I just got lucky, and my opponent was BCE. And in the finals I lost. It was a mirror match. My opponent OT'd on his first turn, so, and then I whiffed my grade 2 Shoujo Doji and he was going second, so I had to ride up and my only chances of winning was if I hit another crit or get an OT. So that was the tournament run. Shout out to the boys, the team. We just went there to have fun, and we ended up placing high. And also to KG Hobbies, CNTCG, and all the people I've met in Vanguard who make these tournaments fun, because at the end of the day we're playing this game to enjoy it. Also shout out to the people I've met in the event, and also you guys, a lot of you guys. Also I met also some of you guys and got some stickers and I gave away some stickers. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.